Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on Mark Vlogs Watches with a very special guest right over here, our very own. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a build up here, Jeff. So, you got to just sit there and take it for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Joseph Conrad wrote a book. It's called The Heart of Darkness. This gentleman right here is a college teacher and professor, an erudite, educated man, but don't hold that against him. I feel like Jeff is our very own Kurtz, who traveled through the heart of darkness to find the horror that lives within all of us. And Jeff has a watch channel that if you don't know, you need to become familiar with today. And that is the Jeffrey McMahon channel, spelled as you see it on his picture. Jeff, welcome to the program and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Mark. That's way too kind. I'm not even sure if it's a watch channel. I like to tell stories, and watches are a big part of my head. So, of course, I unfold a lot of stories pertaining to watches.
I notice every once in a while you'll sit down at the piano and rip off a grand concerto.
So I've written a lot of piano music since the lockdown, but I can't record piano songs because my family, we're all here, and it wouldn't be fair to them to tell them to all be quiet in their rooms. We're all kind of in the same space. And so I'm actually lucky I can sneak in a video here and there, some video content of just me talking. But the piano, I want to get it on video because sometimes I forget certain passages, and I like to have video record of it because I'm not writing the music down like a true musician would. But
so you're an idiot savant. This is just coming out of you.
Yeah, my piano songs have never been better.
Well,
since the last 6 months. It's a shame I don't have.
You might need one of those keyboards where you can put a headphone on and hit the record button right on board. They have those things now, Jeffrey.
That's true. A lack of space. A lack of space. I live in a 1,200 foot square house.
They're smaller than pianos. But we digress. I must say.
Okay, forgive me. I talk too much.
No, you do not. You are here. You are here because you are one of my heroes. So I just want to set the scene, and then we'll move into the conversation. Now, if you are joining us here on board, I want to thank you for participating here. And at some point, I'm going to I'll ask you to provide questions if you have them for Jeffrey or for me or for us both. For the moment, talk amongst yourselves because I want to focus on Jeff, but I want to set the stage first. And in my personal opinion, the watch bug is something that sneaks up on you. You don't realize you have a disease until it has firmly hooked its hooks into your flesh, into your very soul, in a way that can become disturbing, frightening, mind-numbing, and exhausting. But it creeps up on you slowly. But at a certain point, it realizes that it has a willing host. And then much like a coronavirus, it just explodes in terms of taking over portions of your mind and your time. And as I was beginning to wrestle with that concept, and I was starting to watch YouTubers, I found a lot of guys that I really liked, like Andy Hunter and Matt Stevens and Don Haynes, and they talked, all of them, about the fun side. But Jeff, when I found you immediately appealed to me because you talk about the dark side. And you came up with a term that I'm going to throw at you. And if you would explain just how it developed for you, what your thoughts are. But you talk in some of your videos, not about the watch hobby, but about the watch affliction. And that really resonated for me. So talk to me about that.
Well, I resent the watch affliction because it's an affliction because, number one, you get this head game where you're convinced that if you don't have a watch, you're going to be in pain. So you're buying a watch not for the joy of buying a watch. You're buying a watch to alleviate pain. That's the first layer of the definition of affliction. But there's a deeper affliction. It's shame and self-loathing, because as a human being, as an adult, you want to grow and be whole as a human being, and you want to have self-control and self-discipline. And when you see your life being controlled by outside forces, an obsession with a materialistic thing like a watch, and you're compulsive, and you see the childlike nature of it, or the childishness of it, which is actually more pejorative than childlike, then you're looking at self-control issues and lack of self-control, and that is an affliction of shame, and it's very troubling. And suddenly you question your watch journey. Is it a source of joy, or is it an affliction? And does it speak to something about your psychology that you need to address in order to be a real human being? Because you don't want to be a fraud. That's how I see it.
It's a little bit like certs. You know, those were the old breath mints that the kids today won't remember, but you might be old enough to remember. It's two. It's two. It's two things in one: the candy, the breath mint. You know, and really, that you've admirably brought to mind the dark side of watch collecting. And in actuality, my intro, which I didn't play here because we're doing a live stream, but the intro to my entire channel is really an homage to you, because up comes my name, Mark Vlogs Watches, and then up comes my tagline: is it an illness or is it a hobby? And it's like certs. I feel like it's a hobby, but it's also reflective in some senses of an illness.
Can I ask you a question about the illness?
Yeah.
Do you think that, I wonder if social media can contribute to the illness? Because, I started my YouTube channel, started to grow when I was in the depth of my watch addiction, where I wasn't even really questioning it. I was just buying, 2 watches a month, which was great, giving great content to the viewers. But you have to consider the algorithms of social media are such that once you are branded a certain way, your content that focuses on the thing that gets you the algorithms, it becomes a self-feeding loop.
And because you get positive reinforcement.
Exactly, positive reinforcement. We're like rats in an experiment. And if I want to tell a story about myself that doesn't attract the algorithms, then I'm getting negative reinforcement. So I'm being manipulated by social media. And that's very disturbing. In fact, Netflix has a documentary about this called The Social Dilemma, which was just started airing about a week ago. And it has all the subjects. I teach that content in my freshman composition class in college. So I'm familiar with Tristan Harris and Jaron Lanier and the other social media critics who are on that. So I recommend that for you guys.
Well, you know what? I think, Jeffrey, it's a double-edged sword. So as content creators, if you're at all like me, immediately after posting a video, you go right to what's called the creator studio, where we get like instantaneous feedback.
Oh yeah.
And we like, what they don't like, what are they watching, what aren't they watching. And to a certain extent, it's I think it's like a secondary infection. I mean, the actual disease that we have, and I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail, is not all that funny. I mean, we managed to find expression for it, and ideally, in some senses, turn it into a positive. But I really believe that there is a certain amount of obsessive-compulsive disorder, which can lead to depression, that attracts us to the hobby in the first place. So if you're a content creator, just as you mentioned, you get hooked on the feedback. What are you providing into the world, and what's coming back your way? Are they voting for you? So there's that. But if you're just if you're not a content creator, but you're a content consumer, then you can become a voracious consumer of content. And in fact, the content creators can create a desire for a watch that you never really even had before. So you watch a few videos on something, and then next thing you know, Tim Masso has me wanting that damn thing, even though it never occurred to me before.
Yeah. Can I say 2 things about that?
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. We get OCD, and we get a gratification from lots of feedback and lots of hits and lots of likes. And we get a endorphin, a dopamine rush. We'll never become whole from looking for this rush of feedback. There's a famous essay called "I Used to Be a Human Being" by the most famous blogger in the history of blogs. He got millions of subscribers and hits. His name's Andrew Sullivan, and he had a nervous breakdown. He had a nervous breakdown, managing his blog and managing his celebrity as being this famous blogger. And so I don't think we should ever have the illusion that becoming popular YouTubers will fill the emptiness inside of us. It never will. And one last thing I want to say about all that. I used to belong to some social media Seiko watch clubs. And I would take pictures of myself in the backyard wearing a Seiko, a wrist shot. And I want to tell you, it guaranteed me hundreds and hundreds of likes and comments and interactions with people. And it was elevating in a certain way. But I have to say this, and I have to emphasize this, and some of my watch friends had the same experience. It created more anxiety than anything. And when I got off those clubs, my anxieties went way down.
Because you were feeding the beast. You were feeding the tapeworm in
Absolutely.
your mind, the tapeworm in your mind, right?
I agree.
So here's a point that I want to make. And this is a personal story, but one time I had to accompany a close friend to a psychiatrist. Okay. And what I needed to do was to relay to the psychiatrist what the observations of the circle of this person were, so that I could walk out of the office and let those two have their meeting. I didn't spend more than maybe 5 minutes just articulately expressing the observations of the social circle of this individual to the psychiatrist. And then I asked, are you, if you guys have no questions for me, then I'll be happy to absent myself and let you guys have your meeting. And the doctor said to me, no worries, I'm ready to let you go. He said, but I have one question first. And I said, yeah, what's that? And he said, how long have you had OCD? That's what he said to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a dog trainer, Jeff. And so, I mean, I can be driving at 55 miles an hour, pass somebody out with a dog, and instantaneously I know the deal there, whether that dog is trained, old, young, sick, well-behaved, out of control, what the owner is doing. I'm sure you can look at a freshman essay and in like 15 seconds, by reading the opening sentence or paragraph, you know where this is going. It's going to be articulate, well-developed, or it's going to be a mess. And this doctor was on the verge of retirement, right? He had been in practice a long time. So I don't know how he smelled it on me. I still don't know. But when he said that, I immediately flashed back. I mean, and I was in my 50s at the time, and I instantaneously was in junior high school, which is a very quick flashback. And I was waiting in a therapist's office, in a counselor's office at school. They used to have me go in there about weekly, right? And I was straightening everything on her desk.
Wow.
I mean, I was in 6th grade, like, boom. It's the second he said that. It's just like an instant flashback. And I remember everything was a little crooked. Nothing was a lot crooked, but everything was a little crooked. And so by the time she came in, it was all, just so. Anyway, so I think what happens is many of us actually do struggle with obsessive compulsive too. Now, some people have it to the point where it impacts their life. I don't have the hand washing thing. I don't have the doorknob touching thing. I mean, I have a few rituals, but nothing that really gets in the way of me developing my life. Some people have crippling OCD and they really need treatment. It's not funny. But what happens with me is that the focus needs to go someplace. And
I like that.
And so lately it's going on watches. I'll talk to you in a few minutes about where else it went before watches.
Yeah.
But if I look back on my life, there's always been some area of hyper focus, which was like more than normal. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. What is that similar to your experience?
Yeah, my hyper focus was evident early. My parents will tell you, when I was 9 years old, I invented a dice baseball game. And not only did I create the game with dice, I would have baseball cards assigned to my teams. I would have teams, I would have statistics. And my parents will tell you, I played dice baseball. I announced the games in a Panasonic tape recorder. I was the players. I was the broadcaster, Monty Moore of the Oakland A's. I was doing role playing. And this would take me 15 hours a day because I had to be hyper focused on something, whether it be that or working out with weights or playing the piano or my watches. To steer this to a watch discussion, I was watching Random Rob's video. He had a challenge, just wear one watch. And I like my Willard, my Captain Willard. And I've been wearing it about 90% of the time.
Wear it for how long? What's the challenge? Because I mean, I could do it.
Well, I didn't do his where you just wear it 24/7 for a month.
Oh, I couldn't. I mean, I could.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but I have been wearing it. But I've been wearing it 90% of the time. And I have to tell you, as someone with OCD, it's much less anxiety producing to just wear one watch.
Yeah. Listen, here's what happens to me, Jeff. A lot of my angst, and this is like stuff that we joke about and stuff, but at the end of the day, there is a kernel of pain, around which we wrap the pearl of entertainment and fellowship, that we have here. But so like for me, actually, YouTube hasn't been all bad. It's been good in the following way, and this is important. I have discovered I'm not alone. This weird little kernel of insanity is fairly common, and we can share experiences. So what happens with me is I get caught in rotation hell, as I like to call it, where I go to bed thinking about what I'm going to put on in the morning. And I do wear a watch at night. I always wear a watch at night, because if not, I'm wasting 8 hours of wrist time.
I do too. I do too.
Okay. So what happens is occasionally I will exhaust myself to the point where I just can't anymore. I may get to the point where I have manic bursts where I may make 2-3 videos a day. Or then maybe I'll go 2 or 3 months. I can't even stand to think about it, and I won't make one. I may wear 5 watches in a day, but cure for me always is lock up everything, put away everything, pick one, wear it for a week.
Yeah. Good idea. You have watches that are like Rolex, Omega, Grand Seiko, which are gorgeous. As someone myself with OCD, I don't think I could wear a watch at that price point. I would be too paranoid about hurting it. And I would end up just making it a box queen, which is why I tend to avoid the $5,000 and up watches.
Well, each of us has a different
threshold.
Bingo. Or trigger. I think trigger is a better word, and I'll tell you why. Because although I don't want to demolish my watches, I came up with something that helped with that particular problem that you just mentioned. And if you look at Rolex loom and dials and manufacturing techniques 20 years ago and older, they aged, they oxidized, they cracked, they faded, stuff that I'm not big in favor.
Depressed. Now I'm getting depressed.
Okay. But actually that drives the value sky high, right?
Ooh,
so
go figure.
Right? If you have an old, faded, beat up 35, 40-year-old Submariner, it's worth far more than if it had just been cleaned up and repaired. But think about it. If you had a Stradivarius and you took it into a woodworker and they said, "Oh, this shellac, it's 500 years old. Let's belt sander that off of there. And let's put on some polyurethane." It would be bad. So the modern Rolex watches that I like are never going to develop patina. They're never going to develop what's called patina, which is a term that it is the visible signs of age.
It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This might make you feel better about wearing your stuff. Scratches are the new patina.
Wow.
Because it's all we're going to have.
OCD guy like me.
I'm OCD as well. But we have different triggers. For me, a mark on the watch isn't the trigger. Not wearing a watch that I own, not giving it enough time. Or giving it too much time. That's where, those are, and so really that's what I wanted to, then one of the next things I wanted to ask you is, my triggers revolve a lot around rotation. What are the things that drive you, batty? Are there must-have features? And if you discover you don't have one, that it bugs you, or what do you think your triggers are?
Oh, well, must-have is interesting. Well, I do like legibility. I like strong loom, which is why Seiko has always been a favorite. Also, when I say I like wearability, I like watches that aren't covered with high polish, that looks like a scratch magnet. That drives me crazy. So I also I'm thankful that my tastes in watch size has gone down to between 42 and 44 millimeters.
Gone down to 44? Where'd you start?
I started as a clown in the circus, wearing 55 millimeter ballpark watches. I'm embarrassed, but I have to own it. You have to own where you were in your watch collection.
Listen, on some level, this is a group therapy, safe environment. I hope. I haven't been reading the comments, so
I never feel safe, but I don't care.
If they're mocking us, we're bearing our souls. I'm
always
for
being
you.
mocked. Yeah,
we're bearing our souls for you people. So, but tell the story of how you started in watches, because it's really fascinating, and your evolution. Let me just say, your evolution has been to acquire more education and sophistication. So it led you to a much better place. But how'd you start?
Well, it was innocent. I just walked into the Del Amo Mall shopping mall around 2004 with my wife. She needed a battery change for her watch. And as we were walking out of the store, I saw a Citizen Echozilla, the famous Echozilla, 48 millimeters on a very uncomfortable black leather strap. And I don't know how I did this. attribute it to my obsessive mind, but somehow I found the exact model when I got home on Amazon, because my wife was in a rush. We didn't have time to ask the watch dealer what that watch was, but it was stuck in my mind. And I bought it around 2005, 2006 for $205.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they go for about 225 to 300 now, depending on and they're phasing them out now. So they're pretty famous. But I was actually happy with that watch for about a year.
But then
I just wore that every day. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what happened to me. It might have been, I went to the watch store to get my wife another battery change for her, and I saw a big TV brand, a big 52 millimeter TV brand there at the store, and I looked it up when I got home, and I ended up buying it for about half the price. It was selling for like 400 at the store at the mall, and I bought it for 200 on the internet, and that brought me down a rabbit hole of I at one point had 60, I believe it was 60 of this TV brand. None of them filled the emptiness in me. I knew it. And nothing felt better than going on eBay and selling them all off. And it didn't take long to sell them.
I'm doing it right now. I got watches on eBay right now.
I think I sold them all in like 2 months. They were gone, and it felt good. And then I occasionally would buy the same brand again, but it wasn't the same, and I eventually abandoned the brand. I think it was the original Seiko Monster that got me away from the cheap TV brand and brought me into Seiko.
Was that Random Rob did that to me. Random Rob put me into the Seiko Monster. I've had a couple of them now. I think I
don't even have any now, and I don't even use them. Can I just say one thing about the Monster? You know that scalloped shape?
Yeah.
It is a dirt magnet.
Well, and it's sharp. If you're not careful, you will literally.
It is. Yeah.
You know,
it's fine. I mean,
listen, it's a cool watch, but the edges of the shroud are beveled and razor sharp. So if you are not careful when turning that bezel, okay, you'll catch skin, and you could just you might need 3 stitches in the finger if you're not careful with that bezel.
Yeah, I agree. It's a cool watch, and and it's Hardlex crystal, which I'm kind of trying to get away from. And but it's dirt magnet, man.
Okay, here's the problem. When we talk about a quirky, fun watch that you try to bond with, you do for a little while, but then the love affair at some point ends and you sell it. But then you start talking about it like we are now. Or maybe you run across a YouTube video. I mean, we're not only...
I've had that happen.
Right. And then, so that brings to mind another concept that you really, that I told you we'd get to at a certain point. I think now's the time. You invented a term, at least I'm going to credit you with inventing it, because I never heard it before you. And the term is the rebuy. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know. I've done it a bunch of times now, and I have bought and sold multiple monsters. And now that we're talking about it, if we keep going, I'll get the hankering to put one on, and that will send me to eBay.
But if you think about it, the rebuy is something you need to avoid. It's death, because the rebuy philosophically means you're stagnant. You're, as my wife says, you're spinning your wheels. You're making the same mistakes over and over again. As a human being, you want to grow, you want to transform, and you want to break out of the rebuy. And I'm happy to tell you that there's nothing on my radar that constitutes a rebuy. I have 2 Seiko tunas that have Hardlex crystal. I might sell them just so I could buy the new sapphire version. That's not a rebuy.
Do you actually scratch up your Hardlex? Because I don't. Me either.
But I get stories of it.
What's wrong with Hardlex? Well, hold on. Let me ask another question then.
Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is peer pressure will make us dislike something that maybe really never bothered us until we realize the other guys don't like it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So let's talk right now about Hardlex. It has a unique little feature, which is just the slightest bit of distortion, the same way that you might get from like a boxed sapphire crystal or the old-fashioned acrylic crystals. And these boxed sapphire crystals are actually trying to recreate the distortion to give that vintage feel. But Hardlex does that. So if you haven't scratched it and I haven't scratched it, why do we dislike it?
Because I'm OCD, and
Mhm.
it's in my head that sapphire is the desired material. That anything under that, you're getting ripped off. It's deep in my OCD
Mhm.
brain, and I Lee is someone who is a friend of my channel, and he got rid of his tuna after he scratched the Hardlex. Lee
Mhm.
doesn't mess around. He knows a
Mhm.
lot his watches.
Did he take a chainsaw to it, or what? This is Hardlex, isn't it? Aren't the G Shocks are Hardlex
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever
oh
mineral
yeah.
crystal? I've
Most of
never.
them, I wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, the G-Shock Frogman that cost $1,000 is sapphire.
Okay. Well, this is a $230 JDM
Yeah,
product, just new in
there
this
you go.
country.
Yeah, it's hard. It's some sort of. It's not called Hardlex, but it's mineral crystal.
Right there you go. Same kind of stuff. Quick, actually, here's a quick little story, very quick about this watch. It
Yeah,
came yesterday. I decided I didn't like it that much. And I processed a refund because the seller would take it back. And then
yeah,
as soon as the label came, I went out into the sunlight and I realized I think I like it. Like when I'm indoors with it,
yeah.
it doesn't really inspire me. When I go outside and it gets in direct sunlight,
Yeah.
it wows me in the way that I anticipated.
That's funny that you should say that,
Yeah.
because there are watches like the Seiko Sumo Coral Blue, the one that Bruce Williams, I think he still has it. And then there's the Seiko Monster Coral Blue that I sold, and I had both of those watches. I noticed that in certain shades of light, the color was dull, and I was depressed by it. I want this out
Yeah.
of my life.
Right.
And then in other shades of light, oh my God, where have you
Yeah.
been all my life? I'm in
That's
love.
right.
It's bizarre, man.
Yeah. Well, you need a daytime girl and a nighttime girl. And what I decided is, listen, any girl who looks good without her makeup in broad daylight, you might want to, keep. But like you, I have this requirement, and that is, if I wear a watch to bed, I want
Yeah,
my
I do
watch,
too.
right? So I want it to be dead bang functional in the dark of night.
Yeah.
And well, how do you feel about tritium tubes? Because that's the only thing I found that literally, glows all night, like
I've
marathon
had them.
watches.
I've had them. I
Mhm.
don't have any now. How do I feel about them? I don't have any watches that have them. I know that Oris has some, and I don't know all the brands that have them.
I have a few
But
marathons. That's what I
I'm
keep.
happy with the Seiko. The Willard I wear all the time. I don't feel like I'm missing anything when I'm wearing the Captain
Well,
Willard.
Seiko has like insane lume. So speaking of insane, like me, do you have a UV flashlight right on your bedstand?
No, I
Get
have.
one. Get one.
Okay, let me write
Listen
this.
to me. $10. Go on Amazon. $10.
Okay, I'm
It's
writing this
now
down.
because here's the thing. When you charge it, do you have a regular flashlight on your nightstand for charging that watch at night?
No, I have a flashlight here in my office.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
on your nightstand, it's about this big. It's, like
yeah.
2 lipsticks.
Okay,
A UV flashlight uses like 2 little AAA batteries. And,
okay.
you don't get it in your eyes. Don't put it on your skin a lot. But if you go click, click, that's it. And a Seiko lume requires like 10 minutes of strong sunlight to like fully charge, and then it will last longer. And there's a chart somewhere that shows you how many lumens on Seiko lume will give you how long a return on the lume. Click, click. Gives you 8 hours of lume on it.
What do you mean by click, click? Why not?
I mean, you turn it on, turn it off. In other words, 3 to 5 seconds of exposure.
No kidding.
3 to 5, because it's pure it's UV, man. And if you think you got some corona in the air, just go wandering around. Don't use it. It's like don't use it on sheets at a hotel, or you'll never stay anywhere ever again. Because it identifies bio.
Oh, so it's a very specific flashlight called a UV flashlight.
Yep, that's all it is.
What if it gets on my skin? What if
it's gonna, just don't hold it there. It's
so I could actually take the watch off me, and I could just put it on the watch, and then put the watch on my. So because you're telling me UV rays could hurt your skin.
Well, any dermatologist will tell you that, or if
even 10 seconds, even 10 seconds.
No. I'm well,
then it does, and then I'll keep it on my wrist.
I think you're okay here. I mean, if you're really nervous, then you might sunscreen your wrist only.
So you've given me a new OCD ritual. I'm not sure how I feel about that, Mark.
What I'm giving you here is a solution to a pernicious problem.
You're calling it a solution, and
well,
it's not even a. My Seikos have so much brightness already. I don't have a problem. You just
This is a
put in my head
solution.
that I have a problem.
This is a solution to a problem that you didn't even know you had.
I'm upset with you now.
Well, how old a man are
I'm
you,
hurt.
Jeffrey? How old a man?
I'll be 59 in the end of October.
Well, you look amazing, but let me tell you something. If your prostate is anything like my prostate, you get up once a night anyway, right?
Do you take saw palmetto? Do you take saw palmetto?
No, I used to. Like
my brother swears by it. I took it. Didn't make any difference for me.
Oh yeah, no, me either.
Although, are we allowed to talk about that on your channel?
I think we could. Well, listen, our demographic is like 100% male, and probably like 40% of the guys are in our age bracket. So there's a lot of people out there right now.
You and I are moving to Naples, Florida next week. Okay.
No, I'm Jewish. I got to go to the East Coast, not the West Coast of Florida.
Okay. I'm half Ashkenazi Jew on my mom's side.
So, well, then that makes you full blown Jew.
That's why I'm here in LA, man.
Yeah, since it's your mom, that makes you full blown. Have you been to Cantor's Deli lately?
No, I haven't been there in a long time. Everything's closed, but I've been there. I've been there.
Like they have a matzo ball that you wouldn't. Well, these guys don't need.
Yeah. Well, Richard Lewis is a comedian who lives down here. He doesn't need a therapist. He just lives close to a really good bagel place. So.
Well, that's really all you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, just trust me on the UV light. Try it. See what you think of it. Okay. So there is another whole aspect to watch collecting that I feel like you pioneered that I want to talk a little bit about, and that is that you think of watches in terms of tiers, layers, levels. Now, I think we all, to some degree, do that, but you are very specific in your concept of tier watches, at least in terms of your own collection. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah, though I have to tell you, I've kind of abandoned the tiers in the last few years. I'm more into wearability for certain situations and then having a beater for all situations. When Johnny Casual had a station, I got into it, listening to him talk about the tiers, but I've actually been less obsessed with the tiers and more obsessed with the function, the role, the specific use of it.
Well, we're going to get into that in just a second and develop that more. But then let me ask you, let me just kind of tell the guys out there that are listening. And you tell me if I'm representing this correctly. You had your watches divided into tiers according to cost, form, function, and there was some kind of a ratio, and cost was a big percentage of that. And what you're saying now is you've kind of you wiped that chalkboard clean, and you're coming up with a different paradigm.
Can I tell you what happened to me?
Yeah, please.
I had these young students who aren't rich ask for watch recommendations, and remember the day when you could buy a really nice Seiko for $200?
Oh, I sure do. I was in college.
We're talking about 5 years ago.
Well, no, when I was in college, which was in the late 70s, I bought one watch every year or 2 years. They were like $90 and they lasted, and one watch beat the hell out of them.
I had a student from Korea and another student from Japan. They wanted a $200 recommendation. And one guy ended up getting a Seiko Monster, the other ended up getting this other Seiko diver. I can't remember which one it was, but they were so happy with this $200 Seiko. For them, the tier was high. It was the greatest, and I was so humbled by seeing the joy they had for what for them was a big investment, that it made me really humble about looking at tiers and everything. It's all relative,
Yeah, I do. Look, speaking of humble, this is my first book, Let Dogs Be Dogs, that most of the punters know really well. That's me. I'm the handsome one. But my co-author is a monk. Okay. He took the vow of poverty. Yeah. And at one time I was up at the monastery. We were working with dogs and working on a book. And I saw him trying to wind an obviously quartz beater. He was trying to wind it. And it was dead, but it was quartz. And I'm like, Brother Christopher, what are you doing there, buddy? What's going on? And he's like, well, quit working. One of the other brothers gave it to him because he didn't even have a watch.
Yeah.
And, there's a bell tower at the monastery, and it kind of tells you when you need to beware. And anyway, so I was like, well, that's a battery operated watch. You can't wind it. And he's like, oh no, what do I do? So I bought him, talking about being humbled. I bought him an Orient Mako USA. Okay. It's $130.
Yep.
Has the day, the date, a dive bezel. Yeah. It's an automatic. And he took it on. He made a pilgrimage to Italy, and he followed the path of St. Francis of Assisi, which, by the way, is like a 300-mile pilgrimage. walking, okay, on mountain slopes, because in the North Italy, in the mountains, very, like dangerous terrain, and that watch got him through. He could time things. He always knew what day and date it was. It's waterproof. It's rugged, and he told me it was the best watch. He has it still. He said it's the best watch he's ever owned. He never thought he would own a thing like that.
Sounds like a novel. You could write a novel about the guy who went to the Assisi pilgrimage with
Oh
your
no, he's
makeup.
right. Yeah, he's a prolific author. He's written 6 or 7 books.
Yeah.
And that one's on the horizon. But in reality, it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
It's because here's a guy who spends his life in rags and robes, educating other people and their dogs and writing books and stuff. And he takes a watch that would be on the lowest end of my collection. And for him, it's one of his prized possessions. And I think that there's a parable in there somewhere.
Can I ask you a question about tiers? Because I think you're in a better position to talk about tiers than I do, because, you have Omega, Rolex, Grand Seiko. So here's my question. Is the quality of a watch that costs $5,000 to $10,000, is it worth the extra price as opposed to a watch that costs $1,000, $1,200?
No, no.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The answer to that question is, if we now we have to parse it apart. We have to do a little bit of, psychological surgery now. Yeah. If we're going to talk about functionality, on the functionality score, not at all, right? Because this is a $230 watch, and my partner looked at this and he goes, "$230 on that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "I could take you someplace where you could take your pick of ones that look exactly like it for $10," because he thought 230 was like a lot for this.
You're right.
So it's kind of relative. They tell the time. That's what they do. But that being said, if you have an appreciation for things like micro engineering, fine art, decoration, fit and finish, that'll help move you up. And if you have disposable income, that'll help move. I raised my kids. I'm at a different stage of life with my children, than you are now, where you have to really be thinking of their, of their college funds and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
you have to be responsible. Yeah.
I managed to deal with all that. But at the same time, though, there is an area in which the luxury watch, and we could talk for a whole hour on just what is luxury, but at the moment, let's just say there's such a thing, that it's not a myth. The luxury watch, the appeal, if we are to break it down to its most base level, it's snobbery is what it is.
Wow.
It's the ability to possess something. And for me, first of all, what it isn't, I can tell you what it's not. It's not schadenfreude, which is the taking pleasure in denying somebody else something, right?
Yeah.
Archie Luxury often says the pleasure is in owning, hoarding, and depriving somebody else of the thing.
Wow. Ooh, that's called the zero-sum game.
Yeah, but that's not it for me. The zero-sum game is where it is not, win-win is not possible. There's a winner and there's a loser, and that's the end of the day. But for me, it's not about depriving somebody else of a thing. For me, it's this other bizarre thing, which is I'm a product of marketing. Okay. I was raised on seeing things on television that I wanted. There were, when I was a kid, we had 3 channels, 3, 6, and 10. I'm from Philadelphia. And at midnight, they shut off. Boop, there was a test pattern.
I was around that.
You remember in LA, did they play the Star Spangled Banner before they went off?
Oh yeah. LA, San Francisco. Yep, they did. 3
stations. So whatever they showed you on those things, you wanted. And here's what happened to me. There are only a couple of watch brands in the entire world that every human being on earth knows that it's good. I mean, you could go to the Amazon, and I swear, the simple farmers out there have heard the word Rolex, they know what that is. And so there's a certain appeal to me in owning a thing that is just universally known. And in fact, I think it's a personality or a character flaw on my part that this appeals to me, because wouldn't it be for example, you can buy a Jaeger LeCoultre, which will have triple the horology of a Rolex. And if you buy it on the used market, you can buy it for half or less than half of the price. Shouldn't there be more pleasure in owning a finer thing for less money?
Yeah.
But why isn't there? for me.
I have a question for you. You have a Grand Seiko diver still?
I'm going to sell it, and that's the next thing we could talk about when we get
Because
there.
I only reason why I ask is because I wonder if I had that, if that watch has significant superiority to some of my really good Seikos, like my Seiko Transocean that I sold to Bruce Williams. It does. So maybe I should just sell everything and just get the Grand Seiko, and then I'll be done.
Well, we should talk before you do that, because I want to sell mine, and I bought it at a really good price, so I can sell it at a ridiculously good price. But I didn't bring you on here to sell you anything. Well, I will say this. Look, if we pick it apart, let's first talk about Zaratsu polishing. The Grand Seiko.
You're not in love with it.
No, I'm not. It's like, listen, it's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disrespectful of the fit and finish of Zaratsu polishing, but Zaratsu polishing, I mean, it's done with some hand artisanship. Okay. It is a dude, a craftsman. And you have to admire this, a craftsman with a tin wheel using just the right pressure to put a mirror-like finish. But Rolex has invested like $5 trillion in robotic finishers that honestly, I wouldn't be able to look at one or the other and note the difference.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Now, maybe that's because I got older eyes, but what impresses me about the Grand Seiko is the fit and finish, the quality of the thing is because I've owned a variety of other Seiko divers. It's a night and day proposition.
It's $5,000, right? It's a $5,000 watch.
They're like pushing $6,000, but yeah, it's absolutely a fight. Yeah, for sure. 50. No harm in saying it would be hard to find one under $5,500. Now, the one I own is the SBGA. It has a spring drive movement in it, so you get that completely smooth sweep. That's not tick 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 tick.
Yeah,
and that's because it has a mainspring, but the mainspring actuates electromagnets that go boom, 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 feeding power into movement, and that drives the whole. So it's actually very.
What's the maintenance of that? That sounds complicated.
Like zero. There's like nothing to be done with it. So it's a very hardy movement. The only thing that's weird about it is the clasp. It's got an adjustable clasp, which is nice for wetsuits stuff, but it's thick and awkward, and
I don't like thick clasps. I hate those.
And then you have to be very careful about what Grand Seiko diver you buy.
My Tuna SBN 031 has a real thick clasp. I hate it. I had the MM300. The clasp was horrible. And by the way, the bracelet on the 031 Tuna and the MM300 have these thin plates that dig into your wrist, and I hate that.
Well, now let me ask you a question. Are you the kind of guy who can like the watch, hate the bracelet, take the bracelet off, and put a replacement on there and be happy? Or are you an OEM only kind of a person?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, as a general principle, I hate modded watches where they take the bezel out, they do this, that, and the other thing, new dials.
Yeah, I'm not on that.
I don't have a problem so much like this Willard. If I ever were to change the bracelet, Strap Code has a new bracelet called the Roller Ball, and I will do that with some of my Citizens. And I have to show this to you. This is my favorite bracelet right now. In fact, I love it so much. I have the gunmetal black one, but I'm going to get the, see those balls? It's called the roller ball. See those nice orifices? Very sporty. And so this will be going on my Citizen Landmaster, my ProMaster Land. And I want the stainless steel one to put on one of my Tunas.
But how about the end piece on the lugs? Are they custom fit, or are you going to get a weird kind of a fit there? See.
Well, so the Citizen that I have came on a leather strap, so straight edge is fine. No, I know what you're saying. Certain Seikos like the Sumo or this one here, the Willard, you have to get a curved edge, which Strap Code, they do make custom ones for that. Yeah, you have to do that. You don't want the big gap between. But I won't have that problem with the Citizen because it's a straight edge, strap anyway.
I have a couple of Citizen turtles, and on one of them I put the Seiko replacement strap, which has the adjustable clasp, and that's adjustable on the fly. And that's a beautiful, I don't remember what it's called, but it's a really beautiful clasp. It's a terrific bracelet, and it made me like my Seikos better than I do without them. Now Guido Pelagos, hello Guido, thank you for joining us. Guido makes a really good comment here. He said that he was complaining also about the clasp, and he took his Grand Seiko off of it and put it on a leather strap. I wish I could make that work for my head, because it's a great watch. It's a really weird clasp, and the weird clasp just it for me. Are you familiar with the concept of fatal flaw?
Yeah, I am.
So for me, I will focus on the fatal flaw of a watch. And if it's something minor, well, then I just recognize it as there. It's flawed, but it's not fatal. But the fatal flaw is the thing that just kills it. It's the buzzkill.
There was another thing you didn't like about your Grand Seiko, if I recall. You didn't like the short, stubby handset.
I don't remember. I think I did remark that the hour hand is weirdly shaped,
Yeah.
but I think I evolved on that one because it's so incredibly legible, especially at night, because of that lume. So that cathedral hand, I did get used to it. I think what I said in my review is, if it were up to me, I would have made it a little bit longer. And another thing that I would have done is I would have made the hour dots, I would have made them a little bit bigger, because it's a big watch and there's a lot of real estate. So there's a lot of black empty space, and that they could have filled with like a larger lume dot. But, this is us just picking apart the designers. But Guido, I should try that, putting mine on a leather strap and see if it revises my thinking. But here's my problem. And tell me what you think about this. Let me get that off of there. I have a philosophical problem putting a wet watch on a dry strap, and leather really should not go. Now, why is it that I'm not diving? I could put on another watch when I get into the shower, because I do wear a watch everywhere, but why does it bother me to put a diver on leather when they look so good?
Well, I agree with you, but my OCD is such, I don't even like wearing leather. Or, by the way, one of my viewers, he told me to take the leather off my Citizen ProMaster and put a Crafter Blue. And I bought the Crafter Blue. He was right. It's an amazing rubber bracelet, but I still am so OCD. I ended up buying this metal bracelet that I just told you about. So I just don't like wearing straps. I prefer bracelets.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, mind you, when I get into the Grand Seikos have helped me a little bit to deal, but like, here's how it works for me though. The Grand Seiko have kind of figured this out, because look at what they've done to the strap. I mean, you can't even straighten them out. So they are born to form fit to your wrist, and whereas your average rubber strap, in order to get it to conform to your wrist, you have to buckle it on pretty tight. And here's the weird problem. I have wrist OCD, I have wrist claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I need my watches loose and sloppy.
Me too.
All right. So do you get like panicky if they're like too tight?
Yeah, I actually have went to my watch store. They fitted the watch. It fit perfectly. Yeah. I walked out of the store, and within about a minute, as my body heat elevated due to just walking, my wrist expanded 3 centimeters, and I did an about face, walked back and said, "You need to take another link in and make this loose." And they laughed, because I've been doing that for 10 years.
So they know you. Well, here's the thing. Because that's such a huge problem for me when buying a bracelet, I won't buy any bracelet that doesn't have enough micro adjustments to account for a pretty big, swing. And micro adjustments have become almost a thing of the past, because now Strap Code, Rolex, and so many of the brands have got the clasps which will adjust on the fly. Right?
Can I ask you a question about your Grand Seiko? Have you ever looked into a Strap Code metal bracelet for it? Does one exist that would fit without a big gap?
I have to look, but I doubt it.
Okay.
Only because it's a rare bird, that watch. It's not like, let's say, the Monster, the Turtle, hundreds of thousands of units out there.
But some Seikos have these proprietary bracelets. You can't replace them. Like the Transocean, and there's some other models too. If the bracelet gets jacked, you're out of luck.
I'll tell you who does a clasp amazingly well is Rolex. Okay. Yeah. The glide lock clasp on the Submariner and the Sea Dweller is beautiful, because it's sort of self-contained. It just feeds into the bottom of the clasp, which hides. And it's very simple. But I think some of the best engineering is simple. But Not so simple is the engineering on the James Cameron clasp. See, the Sea Dweller and the Rolex or the Submariner, you need to remove them from the wrist, fiddle around with it, close it up, put it back on, and now you've adjusted it. Must be removed from the wrist. Whereas the James Cameron, the deep sea Dwellers, you pick it open while it's on the wrist, close it up, and push it down. There's an external, so you're adjusting externally, and that's way cleverer. But of course, they only put it on that one model for some reason.
Can I tell you a story about Rolex? It was kind of that your viewers might want to hear. I was at Watch City and I met a guy. He was the nicest guy. He had a Rolex sub on. It was 20 years old. It was in mint condition. I don't know what some service he had done with it. And he had no watch affliction, no obsessions. He just wore this Rolex and he was very happy. That was it. His life was very uncomplicated.
Yeah, I would think for a moment that you were pulling my leg.
I'm not.
Telling me a fairy tale. This is like the unicorn of watch wearers. The guy who wore one watch for 20 years and was happy.
But I hear a lot of Rolex guys say that. I got my Rolex. It cured me of the disease. I'm done. No. I found Nirvana. I hear that from some guys. Not all guys.
You know, that's locker room talk, my friend. Don't believe it.
For me. I mean, I know my psychology. I'm not delusioned, but I have also heard guys that say they climbed the ladder and it didn't cure them. Yeah. So I've heard both stories.
Let me tell you a quick story. I don't remember what watch I was wearing in 1987 before I walked into the Rolex dealer. A young Turk. I was in my early 30s. I had made some accomplishments in business, and I thought, I'm gonna buy me a Rolex. Yeah. And so I walked into the authorized dealer in a specific area of Illinois. That AD is still there. So I walk in there and I look at the case. And at the time, okay, this was like mid '80s. At the time, the D-bag watch, which is pretty much I guess what I was after without really knowing what it was. The D-bag watch at the time was the date or the date just. They were 34 or 36 millimeters on a Jubilee in two-tone. Now they were expensive. The Submariners and the Tool watches, they couldn't give those away. Those were less than half the price. Okay. Wow. So, but I didn't want a Submariner. Who wanted an $800, $900 Submariner? What I really wanted was that $2,200 date. I still have it, by the way. And here's the thing. I bought it in 1987 and I wore it every single day of my life, whether I was gardening and had my hands armpit deep into cow manure and peat moss, whether I was at the beach, wherever. I wore it nonstop without fail every day, every single day for 10 or 12 years of my life. Where it went, I went. Never thought about why would you have more than one watch? Why? And I have a Rolex on top of it. Why? And then one day it quit working. So being a bit of a procrastinator, I put it in the drawer to deal with it later and put on something else. And it sat in that drawer for, I don't know, like maybe 15 years before I sent it off.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
No, I sent it off for a refurb, and Kenny Nguyen at Jewelers on Time fixed it up nicely. And so I still have the refurb. I think it was cheap given, that it probably should have had a $400 or $500 service 2 or 3 times in all those years that I owned it. I think my entire bill was $750.
That's cheap. I thought you were going to say 2,000.
No. That would have exceeded the cost of the watch. I would have been sad to, let it go. But
wow.
So I was a guy who wore one Rolex for a really long time. But so let's talk to that for a quick second because we're getting close to our hour, and I promised I wouldn't keep it too much longer. So what I want to ask you is if you tell us a little bit about what you currently own, and then I'm going to give away where I'm headed with it. What I want to know is out of what you currently own, if you had to save only one of your babies, you're on a ship, the wife and kids are safe, but it's you in the collection, and you only got, you got one life jacket for you and one watch.
Well, it's going to be the Willard. The Willard, the shape of it brought me down to a 42.5 millimeter watch. So it's got to be the Willard Sapphire 70-hour reserve. I have one complaint about the Willard. I got to warn your viewers of the Willard. You ready for this? It runs fast.
How fast? That's not a bad thing. How fast?
It runs about 2 minutes fast every 5 days.
Well, hold on, that's only 60. That's 120 seconds divided by 5. I was an English major. Help me out here.
Okay.
What is that per day?
I don't know, but it
All right,
runs. I've never noticed any of my watches running fast until I
gentlemen,
got
you are seeing the results here of a liberal arts education that we have in common.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it's 120 seconds divided by 5. That's 24 seconds a day, quick. That's in spec for like an NH35 movement, you know.
Well, I don't even, but I have people tell me I have an automatic and it's accurate to, so what should I expect? What's a good, I don't know.
Like my Rolexes are with plus or minus like 2 seconds a day. But if you get a watch regulated, listen, I got a guy, we'll talk later. I got a guy who for like $60 will regulate that and you'll be like, you could be +2 instead of +20.
Yeah.
You know? What I do with watches like that, because I have a couple like that, by the way, when I'm wearing them, I just, I go onto the Watchville app with my iPhone. I turn that on. I hack the watch and then ding, exactly when it hits 12, I push the button and I just fix them a couple times a day.
Yeah. So, did you want to know how many watches I have?
I do, because
I have 8 watches, and nothing really surprising to you guys. I have 2 Seiko tunas. I have the all stainless 033, and then I have the black bezel 031. They're both on strap code that Hexad bracelet.
Oh yeah, I have one of those on. It's on nothing right now. My Hexad is in a drawer behind me. I sold the watch that it was.
I have 2 Seiko Pro Master Lands. They're the same model, same movement, GPS satellite. One's a all black with a bracelet. The other one was anthracite blue dial that came on a leather, which I'm going to put on a black bracelet today. I'll probably make a video of it in the next couple of days. I have a Citizen Tough 44 millimeter chronograph, which I use as my beater watch. And then I have 3 automatic watches. I have the Willard, which is 70-hour reserve. I have the Seiko Siam Blue Zaratsu polished SBDC 065 with a 50-hour reserve. And then I have the 051 with the same 50-hour reserve. The 051 doesn't get wrist time because of the Willard. I may be selling the 051.
Now, you have 8 watches. Guess how many watches I have?
I've had discussions with you, and you told me you had a lot.
Yeah, but
so I think you have 35 is my guess.
I can't tell you if you're over or under, and I'm going to tell you why I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I have never, ever, ever counted. So I don't know how many
you
watches.
don't want to know. You probably don't want. I don't think you want to know.
I don't want to know, and I don't know. And you know, the peanut gallery on this channel has asked me over and repeatedly over the years, do a state of the collection where you like lay them all out.
Yeah.
I've never done it. I don't know how many. I mean, I could do a head count by brand and then maybe do some addition, but like literally, I don't know. I think we can wrap up by, on this topic, and I'll tell you what it is for me. And then I want to get some feedback from you. Okay. And the topic that I want to talk to you about, to kind of wrap it all up, because we started with the affliction, with the angst, the pain. You mentioned the word shame. Shame comes from self-loathing. Self-loathing is where you blame yourself for having a thought or an action. And I want to say, I think you should be a little kinder to yourself, I don't think you need to be so hard on yourself. Don't let watches be the whip with which you self-flagellate, right?
Right.
But the point that I want to talk about now to wrap it up is relief. And I'm going to tell you what happens, the way I seek relief, because I feel like we all do this, but the forms that relief takes are going to vary. And for me, relief comes in the form of simplification and reduction.
Yeah, good point.
Which frees up headspace. Now, because it can become exhausting. And I think that that's really a typical pattern of OCD behavior, is just work yourself into a tizzy where you run out of energy that you could be putting into more important things. So what I will do is sometimes I will just make all my watches go away except for one. I'll wear something very simple, like a Casio Royale, for a week or two, or a G-Shock, same one, only one, for a week or two. And then another big relief for me is sell-offs. And I'm going through that right now. I have 3 G-Shocks on eBay, and I sold 3 Rolexes because I've come up with a new watchword. Then I want to hear your thoughts on all this. My watchword is fewer pieces, but better. Fewer, but better. And this is how I'm trying to like make more headspace for me. So
can I add to what you just said? First of all, I agree with everything you just said. When a watch person gets anxious and their collection grows and becomes unmanageable, and they take your wise advice and they shrink it down, they need to remember how awful it was when it got big. And I want to finish with telling your viewers about the psychological principle of entropy. The psychological principle of entropy says that we're all hardwired to just choose the path of least resistance, to not tend to our garden, to be lazy. And what happens is when you're lazy regarding anything you do in life, your body, your watch collection, your marriage, your relationship, weeds grow and things get out of control. Entropy, the definition is you disintegrate into your lowest form of yourself. Everything becomes unruly. And your collection, if you don't tend to the garden and pull out the weeds, your collection is going to grow unruly, and you're going to experience entropy. And entropy means you're going the opposite direction of your higher self, your disciplined self, and you're going to be anxious, you're going to be ashamed, and you have to stay diligent and attentive. You have to treat your watch collection like the way you tend to your garden.
Well, you know, there is some hope in that, because that is the stick that one would want to avoid. The carrot, I think, is that by hyper focusing on a particular subject, you can learn more about that topic in a shorter time than the average brain can, right?
Yeah.
So I had for example, you know, I don't remember who was the guy who wrote the whole book on, 10,000 hours of practice at something makes you an expert, but it's a pretty famous book. The concept is well known. And on dogs, that was like my fixation when I was a kid. And to a certain degree, of course, still my passion. I had my 10,000 hours in by the time I was like 15 years old. So you can become an expert by absorbing, by studying, by hyper focusing. The trick, I think, is to avoid entropy. It's meant to enhance your life and not to destroy your life. So as I'm weeding my garden, what I have to be really careful to do is to be sure that I'm throwing away the weeds, the chaff, but not the wheat, because the trap is the rebuy. And that's what I really need to avoid, is the rebuy.
I don't want you rebuying. Can I just give one last piece of advice to especially your new viewers who are new to watch collecting? I think a mistake that I made, and I'm just getting to terms with this, is that you can't buy a watch, even something lovely like the Captain Willard, and expect it to produce this symphony of ecstasy and dopamine 24/7 on your wrist. That's an unrealistic expectation, and you end up just going to be buying a new watch every week to get that dopamine rush. You have to find the sweet spot, a watch that checks all your boxes. It's good enough, but it's not going to sing to you. It's not going to give you a back massage. It's not going to make you peanut butter chocolate pie. But we do bring those unrealistic expectations. A watch needs to be good enough for your needs. It needs to make you satisfied and happy. It has to check all your boxes, but don't expect that dopamine unboxing rush of all your YouTubers that you're not going to get that 24/7.
So what you're saying here is that the perfect watch, the one true watch, the exit watch, the cure, is a myth. And that myth is very much the siren song that will almost cause Ulysses to crash the ship upon the rocks.
There's no such thing as an exit watch. There's only a disciplined man, a disciplined human being who's ready to receive a watch and appreciate it and not go on the treadmill, the addiction treadmill. Addiction is all about entropy.
I want to tell you something. This has been an illuminating hour for me. I'm so glad that we talked about this. If I would give you one piece of advice, it'd be go a little easier on my friend Jeffrey McMahon. Don't flog yourself with watches.
Self-flagellation is an addiction too. I got to work on that too.
Can be, but I think look, just if you want to see the truest reflection of yourself, look at those beautiful girls.
I agree with you. If your self-flagellation is not producing personal transformation and it's just producing stagnation, then you need to find a new strategy. I agree with you.
So tell us about your channel. I want to send people over to the Jeff McMahon channel.
It's just called Jeffrey McMahon. It just started with my obsessions And because I put a pledge not to buy a watch until January 20th, because the last watch I bought was on August 20th, you might not see a lot of watch content for a while. But I try to, when I have time, I do try to tell some stories about what I'm struggling with.
Well, you have hundreds of videos in the archives. I recommend the punters go back there and watch. You, sir, were one of the first 3 or 4 people that I ever watched, and you speak about watches in such erudite, smart terms.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
kind of.
listen, a lot of the watch channels are all about, and even mine are about humor and screaming and the lowest form of humor.
Yeah.
And you elevate the discourse, sir, and I want to thank you for that. And I think
Oh, I
everybody should check
appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey. I think we should do this again.
We'll be in touch, Mark. I know it.
Sounds good. Take care,
Okay.
everybody. Thanks for joining us. Check out Jeff's channel.
All right. Bye-bye.